Hello, friends. It's Tuesday in Redmond, and I'll probably say something about like and 10 o'clock. So it's time for .NET API review. The list of issues doesn't have a scroll bar today, so let's see how much we burn through. Most of it's marked as future, so we may end early, but uh, we'll see. First up, wow, that's a low number. Add create new process group to process start info 449044. David.
Yeah. Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. So yeah, it's a long number because it's reflecting a Windows creation flag. But okay, so um, right now for sending signals to a process in Windows, um, if you send a signal, it will affect the whole process group, and usually the use case that you want to when you want to send a signal, I mean, if you send a signal to a process group, it will take down the parent as well if you send like the control C or control something. Um, there is use cases where you want to spawn a child process and send a signal to it and not take down the parent. Um, and for that, uh, I think we will need something to signal in process to the create process API um, to use the create new process group flag. This will effectively, when the new process spawns, it will spawn as the its process group leader. It's still gonna be a children, so everything stays the same. This concept of process groups in Windows only exists, or well, as far as I know, only exists to unblock this scenario to send an isolated signal to a child process. That's also why this API is Windows only, because this problem does not exist in Linux, where you can send arbitrary signals to you can send us any signal to using the kill syscall to any process without being part of the group.
It's fair. What ref is this in?
What ref?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Uh, which ref CS file? Is it under
It's system
system runtime?
diagnostics.
System
System
diagnostics.
diagnostics.
Mainly, I'm just looking to see is adding the supported flag here consistent with what we've done, or do we want
Yeah,
to think about it?
we have prior for this. There is a bunch of other APIs that are Windows only in process, and a similar one that is sup only supported in Windows that uses that also reflects a creation flag for the Windows API. It's create no window. But for that one, we don't have it annotated as supported OS platform, meaning that it will not throw on Linux. But that's probably because of backwards compatibility when .NET initially shipped.
Fair enough. Because yeah, it does look like some of the properties are attributed as Windows only, but it is pretty scattershot. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
I don't know that error dialog does anything on Linux.
yeah.
Yeah, really, the curiosity here was is would it be the first property we had decorated, but we've decorated some of them. So
Hmm. So okay, I can add some other thing to worth mentioning is that this API, it has a competing proposal, which is to add the expose the whole creation flag as an API and let the user pass any flags that they want to use to the API. However, we don't have a scenarios for all the flags, so that's why we're choosing to do like a scoped approach instead.
fair enough. And what's the Windows? Oh, you have it here. Create new process group. Okay. Um. Oh, seems fine to me. Anybody else?
What's the? I mean, not having a scenario is a reason not to support all the flags, but is there any other reason that it would be like negative to just allow people to set all the flags? Is it mostly like
Well,
discoverability?
it will probably be a mess to make sure that all the flags do not conflict with the with other properties that we suppose maybe.
I see. So we're already calculating the flags basically based on the other parameters.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Stefan,
And
Tanner, you want to give a grunt of assent?
sure.
All right. I heard some grunts.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. MLChem CNG and CNG identifiers 117091. Kevin.
Hello. So this is a CNG implementation of one of our new post-quantum algorithms, MLChem. We have already implemented the MLChem base class, and traditionally the way our algorithms are implemented, we also provide a CNG, which is a part of Windows, specific implementation of it, which allows you to do MLChem things with Windows CNG keys specifically. This is the Windows counterpart of MLChem OpenSSL. The general use case of it is you have a CNG key, and where that CNG key comes from isn't particularly our concern. CNG key has all of the faculties on it to create them. All we care about is that we have a CNG key and it identifies itself as a key that is MLChem. And we have lots of prior art in the runtime for CNG as a suffix with a capital C, lowercase ng. We have RSA CNG, we have ECDSA CNG, etc. A note on where this class is going to live. So this will be in system security cryptography, like everything else is today. It will also be available down level in the Microsoft BCL cryptography package. The only thing of note there is it will only be available in the .NET Core app targets and .NET Framework. The reason for that is CNG key is not part of .NET Standard. So we can't expose CNG key as part of the public API targeting .NET Standard. There are complicated ways to make it work, like making MLChem CNG an exchange type by not having any members on it. But that's not particularly useful because the exchange type is just the MLChem base class. It doesn't seem useful to me to be able to exchange MLChem CNG. Likewise for CNG key itself. So for that reason, that's why we are omitting .NET Standard from MLChem CNG in the package. And to my knowledge, we've never had a request for any of the other CNG types to be available down level in .NET Standard. So that's the only quirk on where this class is going to live. It has a constructor that takes a CNG key. The name is key. That's what it's called on the other classes like RSA. It's marked as Windows only because CNG is a Windows only concept, again, consistent with the other CNG types. A note on the behavior of the constructor, because it will be important for the property, which I want to propose two ideas for. MLChem CNG takes a CNG key instance, CNG key is really a class that's a fancy wrapper around a Win32 safe handle, or encrypt key handle. And what MLChem CNG's constructor and the other CNG types do is they take the key, they duplicate the handle, and they keep the handle for themselves. When you dispose of MLChem CNG, it closes the handle. The property key returns that interior CNG key without duplicating it on its way out. So we duplicate the CNG key as input because we want, MLChem CNG to have its own handle pointing to the key. However, if you ask for the key out, we don't give you a duplicate back. So that means we're kind of giving you an interior handle to the MLChem CNG instance, and if you dispose of it, like if you say MLChem CNG.key.dispose, you've disposed of the CNG key out from underneath the MLChem instance. Likewise, if you take that CNG key property and stash it somewhere and then dispose of the MLChem instance, now that CNG instance is disposed. That's how the other algorithms work today, like RSA CNG and ECDSA CNG. So if we want to continue doing that, we can. The alternative is we change our property to a method called, get CNG key, get key, whatever, and we duplicate it on the way out so that we can have an independent lifetime between the MLChem instance and the CNG key instance. Any thoughts on key property versus method versus duplicate out? We know we shouldn't duplicate on property because people don't realize that disposable properties need to be disposed. So
It's also weird if a property is newing something up without memoization.
MLChem OpenSSL, as an example, gives you back a handle as a method that uprefs on its way out. The CNG ones don't.
Yeah, so I know we just did MLDSA, and we made it be a property there. So if we want to change it here, we should probably also change it there. And I remember
I don't think we've done any API for MLDSA though, have we?
Do we not? Because it already has
I
search
don't think
working.
Sorry, I mean it's merged as experimental, but we haven't done it as part of API review.
That's fair. I would believe that. I remember we cut it from the review because Windows wasn't ready yet, and we may not have brought it back. Okay, because I know that there's the key handle part, which was that the property, like CNG key.handle, is a duplicating property, which is confusing as heck.
Yeah, that's a pit of failure because people just let that one go to GC, which isn't great.
And then
So
I had originally proposed this as a method, and then it came up in discussion of why, and it was like, oh, it's not the duplicating one, so it can be a property. But if it is being interior state, I don't know. I'm torn between hide your interior state and match everything else.
I mean, the PQC types have already drifted pretty significantly from everything else in other ways. So if we're on the fence between do what we would do if we wanted it to be right versus do what we would do what other things do,
That's fair.
I think switching it to a method helps to at least define that it is something different and not just something with the same name that behaves differently.
Okay. Well, I can type today. Right. Yeah. So the concern being because it's a disposable value, exposing it back means you get into a surprising disposed state.
Yeah, you basically have shared lifetime between the two objects, which strikes me as undesirable.
Fair enough. Any of the alternative name shapes standing out to people? Because
Get key seems the most straightforward.
it does. It feels, speaking with domain knowledge, it feels slightly like you're also talking about the private or public key material, but the types are wrong, and this is only on the derived type, so no one will see it.
Having get key feels weird in the premise of having a property named key.
No. It would be get rid of the property, move it to a method.
Oh, okay, yeah. Sorry, that wasn't clear from the thing. No, I think that's fine then. Get key would be the natural name I'd go to if we can't use a property because it's too expensive.
Well, I mean, we don't want the property creating new objects.
Yeah.
And I thought there was a problem with shared lifetime, but I got convinced I was wrong.
And I guess the only reason I'd maybe, like, if it's always going to create a key, maybe create key would be better. And otherwise just the normal, if we need to differentiate on type of key, then CNG key is clearer than just key. But it sounded like that stuff was minimally discussed already, so I think get key's fine.
Yeah, create would be a bad verb in the domain because CNG key, the type, has a static create method, which is tell Windows to go create a key with a given name.
Yeah.
So get seems good for given that you have an instance of MLChem CNG. I would like the way to go talk to Windows about what this key is. So. Okay, so changing the property to a method and assuming we haven't brought MLDSA CNG in yet, we should fix it there. And if we have, then we should
I don't think
fix it
we've
there
done
too.
any. I don't think we've done any API review on MLDSA. I think it's only SLHDSA that we've done API review on. Yeah.
Didn't we do it like 2 weeks ago? I'll look. I'll look that up. You can continue down the list. Or continue down the proposal.
Oh, no. Yeah, I don't see it. Anyways, but there's a good chance I'm blind. Moving on. These should be more straightforward. So CNG also has a CNG algorithm class. It is basically a strongly typed string. We will have a property on it called MLChem that can be used as a CNG algorithm. This is used with CNG key. CNG key has properties on it to say what algorithm am I, and likewise create methods. What algorithm do you want to create? So we will provide an identifier for MLChem. CNG also has a concept called CNG algorithm group. For the purposes of MLChem, there's not a whole lot of different meaning between the two of them, but it's going to need to be there. The values of what they represent are going to be whatever the string is in the Win32 headers. So these are basically just wrappers around the Win32 bcrypt.h values, or encrypt.h. No, bcrypt. It's
Both.
Encrypt imports the bcrypt values. And CNG key blob format as well. So we have MLChem private blob, MLChem private seed blob, MLChem public blob. These names correspond to the blob types that Encrypt uses for importing and exporting key blobs. basically CNG has its own way of exporting and transporting key values. That's basically a struct prefixing key material. And again, they're strongly typed strings, and the value of the string will come from whatever they are in decrypt.h. And that's it.
Okay. Seems sound to me.
Okay, so only change was key to method.
Yep. And can I get a grunt of assent?
Grunt.
Grunt.
Thank you.
We had the exact same thought.
And yeah, I don't see a API review for MLDSA, so I just crossed it off in my head incorrectly. All right. Thank you, Kevin. Add media type names .application.yaml 105.809. This looks fairly straightforward.
Yeah, these types are just large lists of constants, and YAML is now specified in RSC that this is how you specify YAML, so we're proposing adding that. We had a bunch of entries here every year.
Do we need to do any? This one looks fine. Do we need to do any like proactive enumeration of the official registry of these things and add more, or we're just going to keep trickling them in as people ask?
So far, we've done the latter. I'm not sure if anyone's bothered looking at the list yet proactively.
Same on the server. Is generally we wait for issues. I haven't seen someone file an issue for this yet. For our server side. Types.
Yeah,
So
there are a
we
lot
have
of them.
another type that has this for ASP.NET.
For kind of. Our static file handling will automatically set this based on file type. But I don't think it does so for YAML. But it would for like text, JSON, etc.
Guess the only question is casing, but that feels cased correctly to me.
JSON is there already, and it's cased the same way.
Yeah, and unlike static files on the server, this of course has no behavioral change, right? So this is just adding a constant. So it's a little different, of course.
All right. Yep. Seems good as proposed. Double checking. Yep, everything there's const string. So spell it right the first time, please.
Thank you.
Okay, that closes us off for 10, and or rather that gets us back to caught up on 10. And I'll start with the first thing from future. This is flexible OpenSSL provider support 113.118. In a previous version, we added safe EVP p key handle.open key from provider, where you give it the name of one provider and a key. But because of the way that the provider's model actually works in OpenSSL, sometimes you need to tell it you're loading from one provider, but you don't actually load it from a provider. You load it from a provider context, and there are cases where people have seen that their keys won't load because they need to specify more than one provider in their context. So the proposal is to overload it with something taking more than one provider name, and then there's also a query that you can pass into the thing to give it more options, because that's what the API clearly needs, is more options. And so then the proposal also wants to allow someone to pass that in. So it's currently proposed as IEnumerable of string and using an overload for prop query. Easy suggestions would be to collapse prop query into an optional parameter, because presumably null wouldn't mean different than empty. And we can do other shapes for things, but I don't think we should switch the providers to the end by themselves, because then we would have ambiguity on the first parameter from the current overload.
I think collapsing into an optional property query seems sensible. I don't know how often we take in IEnumerable of things either. Should that just be a string array or a read-only span of strings, or I don't know. Doesn't seem like that one comes up a lot in OpenSSL land.
I mean, in the crypto space, it's probably unique, but I don't know that string array buys us anything. I think we probably... I don't know how I have to pass it down to OpenSSL. I guess we'd end up needing to pass it to ourselves as a char star star. Oh, marshalling, that's going to suck.
Probably. Something like that. But I don't know, just
Yeah. I can't think of many places that we would take a read-only span of string. Like, it's a reasonable type, but that doesn't sound common to me. Steve?
Sorry, what was the question?
Do we ever take read-only span of string anywhere?
I'm sure we do.
Where it's not a T?
Yeah, don't we have overloads of like string dot and cat that take read-only span of string?
String search values dot create takes one.
Fair enough.
I probably concat as well, but that was the first thing I saw and grabbed out at.
Yeah, we have
Index of any.
split.
Yeah, I guess the problem with IEnumerable is technically we could be given an infinite IEnumerable, and that's going to make marshalling even harder. So,
yeah. I mean, having you're going to end up calling probably 2 array on it anyways, but
right.
to know the length.
I probably would call 2 array on it, even if it were an array, right? Because especially in this area, we're going to want to do our normal dance around, protecting ourselves from concurrent mutation and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, in this case, I think it's going to have to get, because the underlying API is going to want UTF-8. I don't know, I don't think string array would pass directly to the marshaller, so we're going to have to do custom block and pointer marshalling on this guy now. So we could do it with one pass enumeration with a complicated data builder, but being finite seems happier to me.
This isn't a hot path thing, is it? Like, is this done every connection or every request, or is this just you set something up once and then you're done for your app?
So most people will never use it. People who use it will usually use it once as a static, and they're like, I could see something like, if you're the implementation of Key Vault, that you would maybe hit this as every request, but not as, or at least every session. But yeah, most people who use this are only going to use it once. So it's not.
I would
critical.
suggest we just. I think IEnumerable is fine then.
You would
if
go with
someone
that
did
over
for-
string array or read-only span of string.
I mean, what? I think so. What is the typical? Is the API usage example? Is that what we expect people to do? Like they have a fixed list.
Yeah. Because they'll need to know for their specific key what's the string. Is there any magic prop query they need to pass, and then what's the go load all of these things together as one library bundle.
So if we decided it was too expensive to create a defensive copy of the array, which I don't think it is probably in this case, in the context of like a TLS session, would we just make it an array and not copy it?
Yeah, that's. I mean, that's one of my suggestions of string array or read-only span of string would be that we enumerate it once to get the strings out of it to make the UTF-8 data block so we can do the p-invoke. Unless somebody wants to tell me that our string marshaller totally handles string arrays, but I really doubt it. So we're gonna have to custom marshal the arrays, which means we can do it mostly in one pass.
IEnumerable seems fine.
But
If we're just copying the string references
we would-
anyway, or using them immediately, like I guess the point is like, are we reading it before the method completes? Presumably yes, right? Like we're enumerating before the method completes.
we're reading it. We're transcoding the UTF-16 into UTF-8. We're p-invoking. We're getting an answer. We're returning the answer. We never look at the array again.
Right. I mean, I think IEnumerable is fine. If you enumerate it once within the method, then fine.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's fine too. I'm not sure what we'd be trying to protect against by doing anything else. If we're trying to prevent someone from passing more than 2 billion strings in, is that why we would do something else?
Yeah, I mean, because we did recently add an intentionally infinite IEnumerable, so IEnumerables could go forever, but that just means we'll while building the data block. So it's on the caller to it's their fault.
We could do that even with a string array as well.
Yep. Okay, we can stick with IEnumerable. And the parameters proposed as provider list. It's an IEnumerable. That's a slight mismatch, but I feel like it's probably the best name that we're going to come up with. Or we could just go with providers, or provider names to be the plural off of the singular.
Provider names. Yeah, list doesn't add much. I think provider names is fine.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess I usually show it on screen slightly longer than that. So we folded the overload with property query into a default parameter. We renamed provider list to provider names, and we're happy with it being IEnumerable. All right. down to half a screen. What's anybody's favorite future?
I'd recommend doing the two at the bottom before we do the SVE ones, but I am available to talk about the SVE ones after. I just don't want to block other issues for something that's going to be experimental for a while longer.
Okay, there's also this sequence reader one hiding in the middle. So
Yes.
marked for review by Stephen Tobe, and he's in the meeting. So volatile read and write for new supported types of interlocked exchange 107449. Mr. Tobe.
Yeah. So in .NET 9, we took the interlock dot exchange and compare exchange methods that operated on a T, where T was constrained to class, and we just removed the constraint. And then we allowed the method to work with anything that we could make it work for. So, basically primitive types, in addition to class, and that also then allows it to work for enums and stuff like that. The proposal is to do the same thing here, and just remove the constraint, and it won't work for any T, but if it doesn't work for the T, you'll get an exception when you try to use it.
And this is just matching interlocked, you said?
Matching what we did in .NET 9 for interlocked dot compare exchange and exchange. It's not the ideal solution, but we don't have any way to constrain T to the various things. So all the things that can be made to work. So it's a trade-off between, either not having support for the other things or having an API for each of the other things, which is also a challenge in certain cases like enum, or just removing the constraint and dealing with the fact that there are some T's that it won't work with, and then it will grow.
Would I be right in supposing that means compare exchange works for along on 64-bit and not on 32?
That was sorry. No, it works on.
Okay.
You asked if
There's a
compare
long
exchange works
overload,
for long
right?
on 32-bit. Is that what you asked?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's always been the case.
Okay.
Because there was a long overload previously, right? And then, yeah.
Fair enough. I was just wondering if I should map it into my head that it works if T fits in a register.
But if I remember correctly, volatile read for long today is implemented as if you're on 32-bit, it actually does an interlocked exchange or something along those lines. Or it does an interlocked read, maybe.
I assume this won't work on my struct of 4 bytes, will it?
No, we special cased the list of known types that it works with, and I'm assuming we would do the same thing here.
Yeah. I mean, if we did it for interlocked, it seems like we should do it here. Whatever arguments could be made were probably made there. It seems the same.
Yeah. And as is normally the case, this is just us approving the API change. I suspect this won't actually get done in .NET 10. This is just at some point, if we can make it work, great.
Is this what's the hardest part of this change? Is it
I've not looked at it. For interlocked, we had to go make some changes in the runtime and both core CLR and mono.
Well, okay.
All right. Yeah, and removing constraints, or constraints are not part of the signature, so removing constraints not a breaking change. You just can't put it back. So, all right. right. We have custom filtering logic for fake logger, sequence reader, try advanced 2, or a bunch of intrinsic stuff.
We didn't do the sequence reader one last time.
We did.
That's not the one we rejected.
We did sequence reader dot consumed span.
Oh, okay.
So we
Yeah.
did a sequence reader thing.
What's this one?
I don't know. Let's take a look. Add a try advanced to taking a span of t delimiter. 71471. Stefan, I feel like you're our sequence reader domain expert right now.
Yeah, I am. I wasn't exactly prepped on this one. I think try read 2, yeah, already exists, and try advanced 2 is like the dev null version of that.
We already have try advanced 2, and this is adding a different overload, or we don't have try advanced 2?
We have try read 2, which outputs a read-only span.
We've got try advance 2, which takes a single t delimiter, and try
Oh,
advance
okay.
to any, which will advance to any delimiter within a span. And this one is basically advanced to this exact sequence of delimiters.
I see.
Thank you.
So
And we have
it-
try read. We
I'm
have try read
wrong.
2 with the
I
exact
think.
sequence.
Well,
That's
okay,
it.
let me see. Now I'm looking at the try read 2 overloads. Does it take a sequence? I think so, yeah.
I see. So it's
this is
this
kind
is
of
squaring
like
the circle or circling the square or whatever it's.
Yeah. It looks reasonable to me at a glance.
It's basically the same as like our string APIs, where we've got the ones that take a character and we've got the one that takes a string, because sometimes you need multiple characters handled.
And the try advanced 2 ones, they both take a boolean that is what is that boolean in the existing APIs?
Advanced
It's what
past
Advanced
yeah.
past. Okay.
it's whether the delimiter is inclusive or exclusive.
What's
That seems fine.
the difference between read and advance?
I think whether it consumes it or drops it. I mean, whether it like returns it or drops it, basically.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Because the reads tell you what it read. So try advance 2 is basically call try read 2 and discard the out.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm
Like
not
all
sure if
the
it matters for API review, but the read-only span of T delimiters are scoped in the existing try read 2 overloads.
Is sequence reader a ref struct?
It is.
Okay, yeah, then we should have it scoped as well to indicate that we don't capture and will never capture it. And I'm guessing the API catalog just doesn't capture ref struct or scoping.
Yeah, I think
Apparently
that
not.
would probably be what's going on there.
Apparently it's in need of a facelift. Okay. So I guess the only question I would have is it now a fully consistent? It looks like we have 3 try read 2s because we have the single T. No, we have 4. We have the single T giving a span, the single T giving a sequence, the span giving a span, and the span giving a sequence. And since advance is discard the first thing, we only need 2. So it sounds like this is completing the set to me.
Yeah, it seems right.
I was just making sure we weren't leaving one out and gonna come back in weeks or years and be like, oh yeah, we should have just done that on this day. I know the rule here. That's a semicolon. All right. Apparently, GitHub syntax highlighting doesn't know that scoped is a keyword. Kevin, you should fix that.
We'll add that to the backlog of all the other things that got thrown into Kevin. You should fix that.
Yeah. I mean, you're the only person I know at GitHub, so clearly every bug is yours. All right. Fake logger, I'm going to assume is Stefan. This is .NET Extensions 5615.
Honestly, I'm not very familiar with this add fake logging API.
Probably
But
should
you
hold
know, I
off
do know
until-
logging in general, and it does exist.
Yeah,
What?
that's fine.
I was just gonna say we should probably hold off until we have somebody who can speak to it well.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm also not. I know what it is, but that's about it.
Fair enough. All right. Looks like we can do an hour's worth of intrinsics if you want, Tanner.
Let's start with the first one, see how we do. Right. So, for this one, the proposal is to expose new API for two instructions related to basically histogram searching. AVX512 on Intel and AMD have a similar instruction. There, the API is called detect conflicts. Here on ARM64, the proposed name from the ARM team is count matching elements, which is how the underlying instruction describes itself as. I've raised that this is potentially a confusing name, and a better name might be histogram count or similar, which more closely matches the implied name of the instruction itself. But the premise is effectively it looks at given an element in left, it compares that to all elements of a lesser index in right, and indicates whether any and it basically indicates how many of those matched. So 0 gets compared to 0, element 1 gets compared to element 0 and element 1, element n gets compared to all elements 0 to n. And so it can be used for accelerating histogram production. And they've got two versions. One is which does it across the whole vector, and the other of which does it only within 128-bit segments of a vector. So, for byte, it will compare the first 16 against the 16, and then it will compare elements 17 to 32 against 17 to 32, and it will ignore elements 1 to 16. Or 0 to 15 if you're 0 based.
I'm sure someone has a use for those.
Building histograms for ML.
Yeah, I just the 128-bit segment variant feels very niche.
Well, that one's more because a lot of people. Well, there's two reasons. One, a lot of people have existing algorithms that work based off of 128-bit vectors. It's a similar reason why many of the Intel instructions for 256-bit for vector 256 operate as if there's two lanes, 228-bit lanes. But the other reason is because SVE vectors can be up to 2048 bits, that gets quite expensive to do in hardware, and to actually execute if you're doing the full comparison of 256 bytes. So it gives a cheaper option for many common scenarios where devs want to take their existing advanced SIMD algorithm and expand it up to arbitrary length vector.
Okay. So your top one uses a T2 in the signature, but doesn't put one in the template generator. How did?
Yeah, that's that's the this is the ARM.
Oh, the
uses
square
a
brackets are your
tool-
pairs.
Yeah, ARM uses a tool to generate it because they were hitting the comment length limitations of GitHub. So in practice, this won't be generic,
Right.
but they've used the T and they've used the brackets to indicate the tuple of the set. So there will in practice be two overloads of that first method. One which is taking uint for T and int for T2, and the other which takes ulong for T and long for T2.
Right. And so really it's their 4 overloads. It's uint, int, ulong, long, uint, uint, and ulong, ulong.
Correct.
Because the second one is the same when we're T1 equal T2.
Yeah.
Okay, so integer vectors get turned into an unsigned integer count,
Correct.
even though the count can't overflow signed, so we could call it whatever we wanted.
Yeah. It's just at the hardware level they describe it as returning unsigned. So
Okay. And you said this is a new name because
yeah, for Intel versus ARM, for the platform-specific instructions, we tend to match the architecture-specific terms. And so there's other places where between the x86 and the ARM namespace, we've got things that logically do similar things but which have different names. And then if we expose a cross-platform API, we decide on something that fits the .NET theme instead. And so this one for Intel is called Detect Conflicts. And the way that ARM describes the actual instruction in their manual is count matching elements.
okay. Is there anything better we can do than left and right to help people understand the relationship, or is it really just RTFM?
I wasn't able to think of anything obvious.
Okay.
I think we just used left and right for, or no, the Intel one only takes in a single value, and we just called value there. But if someone has an idea for a better name, I'm all ears here. Left is basically the base value, and right is the value that it's being compared against.
Because it sort of values in this. It's not quite search space, but
Yeah.
It's like values and data, but then everybody'd say those are the same words. So,
And I think the underlying C intrinsic just calls it A and B.
because usually when we're naming something lax like that, it's a symmetric operation, but this is not.
Yeah.
But yeah, values and data are the best I'm coming up with, and I don't like that any. I don't know that I like that better because it makes me think I understand more than I do.
Yeah, the C intrinsic just calls it op1 and op2.
All right. Anyone want to suggest parameter names, or should we leave it left and right? Inertia has it. And
There's also one mistake in the proposal. It should be in abstract class SVE2, which inherits from SVE, not in SVE1.
okay. And do we have prior art for the suffix in 128-bit segments?
No. Segment is it's an ARM specific term here, which matches the name there. It's HIST SEG for segment. We use on Intel the term lane, which is the term that's kind of been adopted across the industry for general purpose use. But we do use the term in lane there, and so if we're translating that to the ARM specific terminology, then in 128-bit segments is the nearest thing that fits that theme and makes it clear that what the lane size is, because the lane size isn't specific for an SVE vector.
And you think, even though you said lane is the industry term, you think we should say in 128-bit segments instead of in 128-bit lanes?
Yes, because it's specifically under the ARM namespace, and so it's matching their domain-specific terminology.
Okay. And we haven't used lane in ARM instructions previously?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Let me just double check. So.
And we do have a parameter name proposal from chat. Instead of left and right, pattern and data. I think that's about the same as my values in data personally. Of pattern maybe a slightly stronger, helping you say it's the thing you're searching for, but
yeah, we do not use the name lane, and in fact the ARM intrinsics, when they refer to lane, they're referring to the index of the element, so selected scalar effectively.
yay. Okay, hearing no excitement over pattern and data in lieu of left and right. Sounds like left and right will be it, which means we're saying it's good as proposed. Modulo the fixing the base class and adding the missing semicolon.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think we can just go down the list here.
(94018) FP.
Yeah, so this covers some floating point instructions for SVE2. In particular, they've got some instructions for doing complex arithmetic. So you'll note that there's an add rotate complex and a multiply add rotate complex, and then a multiply add rotate complex by selected scalar. They have reciprocal estimate instructions. They've got some saturating instructions, and then they've got some conversion instructions, where the names that they formally use are down convert and up convert. But I think we might be able to improve that because I think Advanced SIMD, we already use the term widen or convert to instead. But otherwise, I can describe what any of these do if anyone's particularly interested. The rotation input, it's a byte constant where the values 0, 1, or 0, 1, 2, or 0, 1, 2, 3, depending on the instruction, represent values such as 0 degrees, 90 degrees, 180 degrees, or 270 degrees. And so it's a direct translation of the underlying immediate bytes that are encoded in the instruction, as per other intrinsics taking such byte constants.
Yes, it looks like Advanced SIMD has add across and then add across widening. So if that's up convert, then
This would be convert to double instead.
oh, because this already says widening.
Yeah. The nuance with the SVE conversions is that for Advanced SIMD, they're able to take in a vector 64 and return a vector 128 for a narrowing operation where you get twice as many elements. For a widening operation where the elements take twice as much space, and they're able to take a 128 and return a vector 64 for a narrowing operation where the destination is half the width. For a vector, you're just taking in the same the same vector size as the output because it's variable width, and the
Sorry, I thought vector was a runtime constant width, just not a compile time constant width.
Right, that's effectively variable. The user doesn't know what it is.
Right, but it wouldn't be you pass a vector 128 in and get a vector 256 out. It's vector is 128 or 256 on your platform.
No, sorry. I was saying the Advanced SIMD signature for the down convert narrowing upper API.
Oh, okay.
That one is on Advanced SIMD is vector 64 float, convert to single, and then it takes in a vector 128 of double because you get two doubles in the vector 128 input, and you're getting a vector 64 out, which contains 2 floats. So you don't have a consideration of what other elements exist. For down convert, because you're working with vector where you don't know the size, you don't have something that is magically half the size or double the size, and you know that statically. These work on upper and lower elements or even odd elements. And that's why they've got the even odd in the name and the upper lower in the name. And so there's a pair of instructions, and the way it logically works is you call it once, and then you take the output of that and call it a second time with the upper, combine them together.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing, saturating, rounding, doubling, complex, multiply, add, high, rotate is a mouthful, but like, the only thing that I'm really personally having issue with is the up convert and down convert.
Yeah.
Would those
upper.
just be convert to single and convert to double?
Yeah, can convert. They'd be convert to single upper, convert to single odd, convert to single odd upper.
Right, I just like, but down convert.
Yeah.
So change down convert to single. So convert to single
Yeah,
narrowing upper, convert to single rounding odd, and then down here
Yes.
instead of up convert, it's convert to double widening upper.
Yes,
Okay.
because that's the name we use on Advanced SIMD is just convert to double, convert to single.
Yeah, that feels.
I had thought I had
That's
fixed that already, but I guess I hadn't.
How dare you? Hear the reprimand. All right, down convert. No, do the renames first. Yes. Down convert to single.
I even left a comment saying that I fixed it.
Hitting save's hard.
Yeah, apparently. And instead of rounding odd, it should be round to odd.
Okay.
Because we use the term round to even, round to odd, round to nearest.
Okay, so rounding.
Oh,
is
you know what?
round
I had actually fixed it, and then a tooling update went and undid it. So if you click at the top and look at edits, you can click on mine there and see the names that I'd given, which is convert to single odd, convert to single round to odd even, convert to single round to odd odd. Because we're rounding to odd and it's touching the odd elements, and we are doing default rounding, touching odd elements, etc.
Okay, so upper. So narrowing upper, you want to just say odd.
Yes, because it's not touching an upper half, it's touching odd elements only, or even elements only.
Okay. So rounding odd upper is round to odd odd.
Yep, because we are doing a round to odd and touching odd elements.
Woo. Alright, and then so convert to double is odd, not widening upper.
Yes.
Okay. Are there not even variants?
The even variants, I believe, are part of SVE 1 instead of SVE 2.
So that means we should already have a convert to double even?
I believe so, but I am double checking the manual and that this isn't just an odd case where they provided half the instruction and not the other. Because there has been a couple of those.
Because on SVE I see convert to double, but I don't see convert to double with a suffix.
Yeah, this one I'm just trying to check because it's SV convert to double uses fconvert. Okay, so okay, yeah, so the SVE one is convert to double. That one touches the it touches elements 0 to count of the source, and it produces elements 0 to count in the destination, leaving count to 2 times count untouched. So it leaves them whatever they were in the input, and we normalize that behavior to say 0 those upper elements. And then for SVE2, where we're doing convert to double odd, it's because that corresponds to fconvert LT, which only converts the odd elements. There is not one that touches the even elements that I can see in the instruction list.
Okay. And I assume the same is going to hold true for the fconvert x and fconvert x int.
That's what it looks like.
Oh no, wait, this one you said even.
Okay, yeah, that one does have both.
I missed.
Fconvert X. Yeah, that one contains both. It's the LT that doesn't contain both,
Okay, so
which is one of those cases where they provide one of the halves and not the other half.
we have convert to single odd with no convert to single even, but then we have convert to single round to odd with both even and odd, and then convert to double only odd.
Correct.
Dear hardware manufacturers, I don't like your assembly instructions. Just saying. Okay, and then oh, it looks like so add end left right looks like get preserved in future updates. Okay, and you actually don't like the tool name for the long thing.
Yeah, the ordering was incorrect compared to the ordering we had done for Advanced SIMD. The ordering should have been multiply, add, rounded, doubling, saturate, high rotate, complex by selected scalar. Which is a mouthful, but I don't think the biggest mouthful in the instruction set.
And yes, that looks like that differs from the next one by not taking, or one of them takes the M index. Have we really used an underscore in that?
Sorry, I don't see which one.
Oh, sorry. So the tool put this back as IMM underscore index.
Yeah, and we used right and right index to make it clear that it's indexing the right operand, not the left operand, which is what we did in Advanced SIMD.
Okay, so these are add end left and right.
Yes.
Okay. And then right index.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't realize that the tool had come in and undone the fixes that I had done.
Okay, so saturating, complex, add, rotate. That's also not the order it does things in.
Yeah, the existing order and naming convention we have is we say add, then saturate, because we're primarily doing an addition, and then we're saturating after the addition.
Okay. I think I captured all of the renames in the thing, but not in the summary. So, summary says a bunch of other renames. I apologize. But notably, the underscore is gone, and that says right index. Which I guess this one it got right. Unless I changed more things than I remember. Alright, I don't know that I really like round to odd even and round to odd odd, but that's what
Yeah,
happens when you make a pattern and glue things together.
Yeah, I called that out as an oddity further down.
Or an even T.
Yeah. I don't think we have anything else called too odd odd or too odd even or anything like that, because Advanced SIMD didn't have the odd even consideration there. So we do have odd even considerations for other APIs, just not that combination. We could call it, although it might be potentially confusing on the order, we could do convert to single odd, round to odd.
Because that doesn't mess with any observable ordering,
Yeah.
unlike the
And
multiply add versus add multiply.
and then it keeps it grouped with the convert to single odd and makes the rounding a suffix on that.
I think I like that better than I was going to suggest inserting, or potentially inserting selecting, but yeah, if we just float the last token left. Alright, convert to single odd, round to odd. Which is adding a rounding suffix, or you can think of it as adding a rounding step to the convert to single odd. So, alright, I think I'm happier with that. So, look good to you, Tanner?
Yes. And it looks like the other issues don't have the tooling update oddity. So we shouldn't have that problem again.
Okay, gathers 94019.
Yeah, so there's a corresponding one that pairs with this kind of, which covers the scatter APIs. But the premise is you have a vector, you want to scatter that to a set of addresses. And so the general premise is you have the addresses you want to gather the elements from, and the mask of elements you want to load. The elements that are not masked, or sorry, the elements where the mask is active, so true, will be read from memory. Any addresses that aren't read from memory aren't attempted to be read from memory, so they shouldn't cause a fault. But we have pairs where the addresses are uint, or and ones where it is long, because there's both short addressing and long addressing forms for different scenarios. In all cases, they're being told to gather a specific T, and so we specify what that T is in the name. So gather vector byte, and we're going to zero extend those bytes up to fill the 32 or 64-bit space. So, for example, the first API, if you specify a uint address, and vector is 16 bytes long, you're going to have 4 addresses, and you're going to load 4 bytes, and those are going to zero extend to fill up the remaining 24 bits of the target vector. And then we've got sign extending versions for the sign versions. But then each one has the int, uint, long, ulong pair, depending on whether you want a signed output, depending on whether your address should, depending on whether the mask should be signed or unsigned, and whether the address is always unsigned.
So I'm confused by, for example, this. It says it's gathering vector int 32, but it's returning a vector of long.
Right. So you because you only have one size vector and you don't know that size, you can't do something like take a vector 64 of ulong, or you can't take a vector 128 of ulong addresses and return a vector 64 of int results, where you have 2 to 2. The only way to get this to work is you have to have the input and output match, or you have to have some kind of even odd or lower upper pair. And so the way that these instructions work is if they take a ulong address, they're going to return a long result. They're going to read 32 bits from memory and sign extend it up to the long.
Okay.
So it's gather vector of int 32, sign extend. To make it very explicit, it's going to read 32 bits and then sign extend it up to fill the target type. And then, of
Gotcha.
course, if the target type is actually int, the sign extension is an op.
Right. Okay. So what you were saying with gather vector byte zero extend, so that's load your ulong specified addresses, but only read 1 byte from each of those addresses, and then that will make a vector of ulongs where at most 1 byte is non-zero.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
And then non-temporal is the existing word we use in the other intrinsics and the cross-platform APIs to indicate this is allowed to bypass the cache.
Okay. And I looked, and gather vector does seem to be the name that we used previously, even though it sort of feels like gather and vector kind of go together and the vector's not needed, but it's already there.
Yeah, we've often used that to make it explicit because sometimes there's scalar APIs or APIs that happen to return a scalar type and we need to differentiate, so we've just consistently put the vector word to make sure that it's never ambiguous what it means.
Sorry, so when you said non-temporal bypasses the cache, are you
Is
talking like
allowed to bypass the cache?
it's allowed, so it might not? So
Yeah.
Interesting. So that means like if something wasn't flushed and was like only in the L1 cache, you might miss it, kind of thing. Is that?
No, so it always does an appropriate based on the memory ordering rules of the underlying architecture. It always does an appropriate read. The consideration is that so normally when you do a read from memory, it goes and attempts to hit the cache. It checks if that cache entry is up to date or if something else might have invalidated it. If it misses, it goes to the next level and so on. And then when it ultimately reads a value, when it finds a value, it will pull it into the next higher cache level or levels. By bypassing the cache on a read, you're basically saying get this value from whatever it is, but don't go and update the higher level cache entry. So don't pollute the cache, because I know that I'm not going to reuse the value again in the future. So caching is pointless.
I see. So it's strictly a perf consideration. It wouldn't change the behavior compared
correct.
to. Okay.
It's specifically for cases like, you're working with a 64 megabyte buffer, and you're going to iterate that entire buffer, so you know that by the time you've finished iterating like half of it, you're going to have completely wiped out your L1 cache anyways. And you basically just want to prevent wiping the cache for every other program that runs on the computer.
Interesting. I would have never guessed that from non-temporal, but to be fair, I don't think any two words would have made me guess that. So, and if we've already used it,
Skip cache write.
skip cache write might be better, but I guess if we have used non-temporal already, that makes sense.
Temporality is the formal term used on both Intel and ARM and other platforms, because it refers to temporal locality and how it touches the cache. So it's a computer researchy word almost, but it's the formal terminology used everywhere.
If you read the ISA, you would know, basically.
Or if you've taken a course that dives deep into computer caches and how CPUs work, you probably would know as well.
Got it.
Okay, so from these guys in the middle, what it's adding over the where did I find those? SVE1? Yeah. So SVE2 is adding the skip cache write, aka non-temporal variants, but then all the rest of these are about size manipulation.
Yeah.
Okay. And what's the deal with the with byte offsets? Is that a thing we do? Gather vector with byte offsets. Okay.
Yep.
Officially don't care anymore.
Yeah.
It's once there's prior art, I don't care, because match what we've done is the right answer. And my head says there's something about address versus base. Is address what we want, or is base what we want?
It's address. We had a review last week where we had previously reviewed and approved the some parameters with the word base, but base is a C# keyword. It's not. It's technically usable, but we don't do that. And everywhere else we've used addresses specifically because base isn't allowed.
Okay. So I am remembering there was an issue with the name, but the name we want is address. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, seems legit to me. this one taller? Oh, this is the breakout.
Yeah, that's a full breakout with the extra comments that you request that we don't normally add to the API review.
Yeah. Oh, it's already hard enough to read spec sharp as it is. So. In fact, if you could just like collapse these two. Oh no, this one actually took a different signature. There are a couple where they're like, oh, this one, T1 versus T2. It's like, just give me the redundant pair that says long, long.
Mm-hmm.
Don't make me think about it. You can have a dictionary of string. T1's allowed to be T2. It just doesn't have to be. All right.
And then for the next one in the list, let's skip one and grab the scatter instead, since it's paired and will be easier to. So as is typical for the store APIs, they don't have to overload based on return type, so we don't typically include extra information in the name. Hence why we just have store versus typically having load vector 128. So for scatter, the names follow the existing store convention, where we're able to simplify it down to just scatter 16-bit, scatter 32-bit. We don't have to specify what the sign is. That's obvious by what the T is. It doesn't really matter for storing either, since it's just taking it as is.
Yep. And I see
just a truncation.
that SVE1 had scatter 16-bit narrowing, so this follows that pattern. And then we have with byte offsets narrowing. Presumably what they added was more types.
Yeah.
Or more shapes of the address space.
Yep. And then it comes with pairs of signed and unsigned inputs. That way users don't have to try and convert between them.
Okay, looks like these are maybe adding some overloads with indexing, because I don't see... Oh, nope. I found some. Never mind.
I feel like I might have missed and thought about it just as I was reading this. We normally use indexes instead of indices.
Yeah, that was the thing I meant to ask on the last one, but the... I'll distract the window.
Or is it indices? I don't know. That's how I've heard it pronounced, but I don't.
Yeah, indexes or indices, and oh god, that white hurts so bad.
Oh, it's missing an I though. If you're trying to spell indices, is it? Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. So the at least currently checked in under SVE1. Yeah. We have scatter with indices.
So notably, SVE is experimental. We can fix that.
Yeah, actually,
Fair
that
enough.
I think is a misspelling of indices on the screen right there. I think it's without the I. Yeah.
That looks to be a misspelling,
Fair
and
enough.
we don't have prior art in Advanced SIMD, so if we want to fit the normal .NET convention of indexes, or at least I think that's the normal convention, then we can say to fix that now.
Indexes. No, fine. Quit doing what you want to do. Do what I want you to do.
I feel like the indices versus indexes question comes up, and I can never remember which one is correct for
Yep.
.NET.
That's why I had to find the table. Capital indexes, lowercase indexes, never indices.
Yeah. And for advanced SIMD, we did do it correctly as indexes, such as for vector table lookup extensions.
And okay.
And I'll log an issue to fix the existing SVE names based on this, and double check that there weren't any other APIs other than the scatter ones that were wrong in the existing SVE.
Okay. So now this one, copy, paste, make the same substitution. There are no indices with too many i's in them in this proposal. Oh wait, these use base address.
Yeah, that should be address. Not,
They use
and
address except the
address.
last four.
Okay.
Which seems weird. Well, now you get bullets. No, don't. Damn it. Don't copy. Before anyone feels like mocking me for not knowing how to use my new split keyboard, the problem is I'm not using my new split keyboard. Okay.
The next three, or the last three, I should say, they're a little bit more complex. I don't think we'll get through them in the last 10 minutes. So, I would say just leave them for now.
Okay.
Want to try the interlocked one I just marked ready?
You might have to drop it in chat.
No, it refreshed.
Never mind, I see it. Yeah.
Okay. 114568.
So we already have interlocked or an interlocked AND for int uint long ulong, and in the past we've dropped generic constraints on, or rather added generic variants for things like compare exchange. Or and don't have that. So for enums, for example, right now you have to do unsafe casts, things like that. So this is proposing adding a generic overload that lets you use it with enums. Similar as with compare and compare exchange, it would blow up at runtime for anything that doesn't make sense for or interlock. The struct constraint is still there since or and don't make sense with classes. And as far as alternatives go, we could try to match something more similar to what compare or exchange does, which is we just list all the old overloads for like small numeric types and then have a generic without constraints or specific to enums and so on. Former just seemed simpler.
I think we should probably wait for Steve on this one.
I was wondering about that. Like, it's not exactly the same as compare exchange, which is now currently like unconstrained, right? And just throws a runtime for certain types. I guess also curious, if you do the struct comma enum, does it mean that that's only for enums?
Yeah.
So I
But
think it would
in
be
that case, it would block.
say enums can do or, and then we also write out everything else that can do or. That's what I interpreted the proposal to be, or the alternative
Right.
proposal, which is probably the
But
way that I would want to lean, but I think I'd want to hear Steve's counter argument.
Well, you mentioned we currently do that for interlocked compare or for interlocked compare exchange or something, or one of the overloads.
That's more a historic thing. We approved the generic thing the last, and that's where we ended up. I asked Steven about it offline. He mentioned that he would prefer like having one overload instead of listing all of them. Extra comment being that if we were able to add like I binary number to enum, like then we could constrain it here, but that has issues on its own.
I also don't know that we can do interlocked I binary number in a sane way, because
No, we can really only do it for primitives, and it's not come up for review, but people have asked for it in the past, and I think particularly with enum, it becomes more interesting, because this is namely going to be used with flags enums of interlocked is notably missing XOR today, even though all platforms provide an interlocked XOR when they provide an interlocked and an OR. And so for enums in particular, where you're likely using it with flags, OR is useful and is less useful. But it is sometimes used, but XOR is needed for toggling atomically, and otherwise you cannot toggle a flag on versus off. You have to do your own detect if it is on, then set or clear, which risks tearing issues. So it's possible we need to discuss XOR at the same time if we're doing enums.
Yeah, I mean, I still see it and is at least as useful as XOR for enums for masking, right? But
yeah, it's for clear, but so OR for set and for clear, and then you're missing toggle.
Yep.
I thought we said no to XOR when we were discussing OR and AND originally for like int overload and so on. Is that not? Might be misremembering.
And OR have been around since like .NET Framework days. XOR's just been one that's been missing the whole time.
Other ORs. Yeah.
So we added
We added the DIT 5.
in the issue back here, we approved Zor, just no one wrote it.
Oh, we did?
it
says, since these were approved in an even older issue, we should add them.
Unless we want to like avoid extra overloads, but at that point you probably want consistency with and or.
Those just look like the unsigned versions.
I just don't
see.
see interlock.xor at all. So
yeah, this proposal was about the
unsigns.
About the unsigns, which is why.
And then.
So I'm guessing 23819 approved the signed ones.
23819 was about adding and or and Zor.
And did we approve all of them?
And it says we approved them as and or and Zor.
Oh, well, then I'm going to go and implement that because I've been wanting it.
Okay.
Wait, did we ever? Where is the approval for the unsigned ones?
That That's this one is the unsigned Zors.
You mean signed?
Sorry. 23819 was the signed. 24694 was the unsigned.
Where's the unsigned one? Is it
It
open?
says-
Sorry.
On screen right now, I have the return types were wrong.
Oh, I was just we were looking at different things.
Okay, I was looking at the parameter ref uint.
Yeah,
Like it says
yeah.
uint right here. You're like
Yeah,
it says
yeah.
int right here. So I
don't
get
know. It's confusing.
it. Apparently, Immo's ability to type use is limited to the first half of the proposal.
Okay, so this is the unsigned one.
Yeah.
Alright.
Yeah. So, I mean, we can debate with Steve offline, I guess, if we want to add the things that were already approved that we never added, or start arguing about trying to collapse them into a T. But personally, I hate T's that you find out at runtime that they don't work.
I understand that, and especially given that we have and or for the specific primitives already.
Yeah.
It would be weird for Zor to be different.
Yeah, I think the design I like best is,
That approach.
yeah, expand it and then have the enum to make it explicit, for enums.
Yep.
Well, and if we have the full set of types, there's nothing preventing a user from defining their own extension method that handles enums.
And enums have to be like a byte or a int or a long or something, right? Like they can't.
Yeah,
They'll
they're-
all work.
They're
Yeah.
restricted to primitive types.
In
It's not the
C
nicest to have to run your
sharp.
own.
I-
It's both C# and IL that restricts it.
Okay, I thought I was thinking there's one that IL allows that C sharp doesn't. Is that floats?
So
Might be float.
Okay.
the runtime allows float and double because mono historically allowed float and double, and
That's
we did-
impressive.
we did that for compat reasons, but the formal ECMA spec actually does not allow float and doubles, and we
Okay.
have an augment now allowing it because mono allowed it.
Gotcha.
Man,
Okay.
I need to come up with code that needs a float enum.
No, you don't.
Pay attention to the Mantis. Which version of Nan is it? No, just kidding.
Yep. Enum nan 1, nan 2, nan 3, nan 4. Yeah. So I don't think we have the right people to say yes, especially because everybody who's here is wanting to say no to the proposal. So, or rather, everyone here says expand it, but I think we want to hear Steve's counter argument.
I guess the reason why the or and might be fine is for the same reason that we just changed volatile, and why the other interlocked API that we relaxed where we removed the constraint. In volatile and interlocked are special, kind of like the intrinsic, so while having the generic T and having certain ones that don't work suck, it's also kind of what those low level APIs are already doing. We could improve that if we have concerns with some kind of interlocked bool is supported T method that allows you to query, is the T going to be supported by the interlocked APIs or not?
Yeah, I mean, really, it would be just figure out what our overall plan is, because like compare exchange is exploded for all the types, but then also has the T, and it had the T really so that all reference types didn't have to lose their state down to object while you did the compare exchange.
And I think that didn't work because of the refness
But
as
then,
well.
yeah, and then we popped that for reasons to avoid expanding a little bit more, but like compare exchange allows for floats, and or I don't think we want to allow for floats, so it's if list is going to be way smaller, then maybe we still want to stick with enumerating. So yeah, so we want to talk, this is really way less about the proposal of these two things and more about what do we think the shape of interlocked is. So
Yeah, that's
Alright.
fair.
So, so yeah. All right. I know I'm not here next week, and nobody else has volunteered to stream that I've heard of. So, I'm going to assume that means there's no API review meeting next week. But hey, maybe there will be.
I would have to learn how to stream. No, I think at least you got the backlog pretty low.
Yeah. I mean, we are completely caught up on things marked as being included in 10. This one has no milestone, so it's last. Anybody who cares about extensions, bug prioritization might want it to assign a milestone. And yeah, otherwise we're looking pretty good. So if we have to take a week off, no big deal. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining us online. To Americans who celebrate Go Eat a Hot Dog Day, happy upcoming 4th of July. And I'll see you in 2 weeks. And if there's a session in a week, then maybe other people will see you. But we will eventually return to our same .NET time on our same .NET channel. And until then, I'll go with ciao. Ciao.